My name is David Cohn. I'm a senior director of innovation at Advanced Local, which is a media organization. We own and operate about 10 different news organizations in different markets. So Cleveland.com in Cleveland, New Jersey Star Ledger, NJ.com, Oregon Live, The Oregonian, etc. My role within the organization is to try and figure out how to incorporate new technologies, specifically on the content side. So working with reporters, for example, and figure out how we can do, what we're doing, better and faster and uh, stuff like that. 9 a.m. or 10 a.m., whatever time we want, we'll basically trigger one of the workflows. So we have another application in MindStudio just called cron jobs. And these are applications that the first thing they do is they go to a specific website, like the New Jersey Court of Appeals. We also have one for Pennsylvania Court of Appeals. And every morning we scrape that website. We find, how many cases had rulings that day. We go to the PDFs of all those rulings, and then scrape those, and then basically, again, create a morning report for our court reporters. And on any given day, there's anywhere from 4 to 10 appellate rulings, and it's the kind of thing that in the past, it's like if you have the time, they would go and do it. They'd spend an hour or 2 hours looking at all those court documents to decide if there was one that was interesting that day for a story or related to something that they have been covering. But now, every day, I think that one runs at 10 a.m. their time. They just get that report. We do that for court rulings. We do that for food recalls. We do that for fatal crashes. There are certain websites that will report fatal crashes in some of our markets. So we scrape that every morning if there's a fatal crash. Things like that, essentially. And again, it's the kind of stuff that, those don't go public. We're not sharing those publicly. Most of the public probably would be interested in most of it. But from the reporter's perspective, it's huge, right? Because it saves them a ton of time in terms of research. So they can, again, focus on whatever it is that they're doing, knowing that, if something, was important, it'll show up in here. I can just scan it and know that something on my beat came up. So I'm getting a lot of requests and building more and more of those cron jobs out. And again, that was sort of one layer deeper in terms of MindStudio, where I was like, oh, I actually don't need a human to trigger these, right? Like, this is something that I know I'm going to need basically every day. And so we just, trigger it every day. And truth, there's another layer that we are not fully incorporating around things like Zapier, et cetera, right? The if this, then that type moments. I hope to get there as we, sort of go further and further into this and show more and more of how it can be used within a reporter's, daily work cycle. Adoption is still growing, but it's still probably being used over 3,000 times a month. I visited a newsroom last week and I was like, hey, just give me one annoying task. And I was there and she said, it's this, I have to reformat these. And I said, great. And right in front of her, again, how easy is it? And as like, you think I'm really smart, I'm not. Here's how I do this. And I just did it right in front of her. And she started using it this week and it's already sort of, she wrote me and said, this is great. Thank you. I have built, again, if I had to pick a number, 80, it's growing all the time. And it's always based off of me being like, one of the challenges is I know what is possible and I try and bring that to the table. I don't know what they always need, and they need to bring that to the table, and then we can meet halfway. I think a lot of organizations are tripping over themselves to try and capture like some of that really easy, low-hanging fruit. And again, to me, all of that is MindStudio is like can tackle all the low-hanging fruit stuff so that we can come back and really think about, okay, what is our position on search as a result of this? So I created a workflow that was headlines for this particular type of genre of story, different headline rules. And we're still in the middle of the test. We're like 3 weeks in, but so far the AI generated headlines are basically outperforming the human ones 2 to 1 in terms of clicks. And then one other workflow, again, this one would have been on the affiliate one. Just the ability to have background information and features and things like that has allowed those stories to sort of really outperform in terms of their tail too. Like a lot of affiliate stories have basically a shelf life of 1 week. But by putting in extra information in there, I think it ends up powering their SEO for an extra week because there's like, so again, it's basically doubling the shelf life of these stories. Some of the earliest ones were things like headline suggestions, right? I have a first draft of a story. What are some headline suggestions? And that is the kind of thing that actually in newsrooms of old, people would just sort of spit ideas back and forth. But now we're all working remotely, and so to have a creative partner in generative AI, they can do that, right? And not only are these headline suggestions, but they're informed with a prompt from that is very much inspired to and informed by our SEO expert. So like these are, highly tuned prompts based off of the best SEO advice we can get. So things like headlines, social copy, give me tweets, Facebook posts, LinkedIn posts, etc. Some of it is simple reformatting, right? Like it's, I joke, it's not going to win us a Pulitzer, but like these are the tasks that when we get letters to the editor, they're often formatted in all kinds of ways, as you can imagine. And so, just running it through this, it kind of formats it, it removes all the strange spacings and things like that. Um, you know, uh, it ranges even beyond those, obviously, but I picked that one out because again, it's a task that yes, a human can do, and it probably would only take them 10 minutes, maybe. Now it maybe only takes, 30 seconds. And it's not so much even the 9 minutes it saved, it's almost the mental tax of having to go through that. Because yeah, maybe in terms of time, it only took 10 minutes, but like preparing for it, the sort of like, oh, I just had to do that. Maybe I had to do it 3 times. Now I'm ready for a 10-minute, all of that now is kind of out the window. And so it really does condense. We're also using it even for things like, again, extracting quotes from stories. So if reporters are working together, say, hey, I just need to see like, what are the quotes that you used in this, right? Just bring them to me. Or where it gets even more interesting, of course, is when we're working with documents, large documents, PDF analysis, RAG analysis, when we have major PDFs. One workflow, and then I'll pause again. I apologize. One that I'm really excited about, we call feedback loop. We stopped taking comments on our site a long time ago, 8, 9 years ago, because the moderation was just too heavy. So now what we do is we have open callouts. The audience, through a form gives us, all their feedback on. We've been using it a lot for sports. What do you think of the defense, last game or whatever, right? And now again, rather than having to read through that, we can do analysis on all those comments. And then we're actually using that to inspire and produce future stories. Like, hey, here's what everybody thought of our defense last week, essentially. I'm really excited about the potential of that, the interaction with the audience as well, using tools like MindStudio. We have a tool that when, obviously, reporters are doing interviews all the time. They take the audio, they upload it, and we get a transcription. And there are lots of transcription tools out there. We actually created our own, partly because for data privacy reasons, we didn't want to use a third party to do our transcriptions. But also now using MindStudio, we basically take transcript and turn that into the start of any workflow. We have a transcription toolkit. So what I described to you earlier was what we call the reporter's toolkit. And that is when the reporter takes initiative, goes into this reporter's toolkit, and they have a specific goal they want to do. If they are in our transcription tool, we load the transcription toolkit. And the transcription toolkit, everything already pre-uploads with whatever transcript they're on. So you're on a transcript, you interviewed the mayor. And again, we just hit, transform, right? Give me a summary. Find the most interesting moments in the transcript. Obviously, it's interpreted by generative AI, and so you want to double check it. But you're the reporter, so you kind of already have a sense of it. And just being able to again, another great thing about the about MindStudio is these applications can be very focused. So again, one for reporters, one for transcriptions. We have another one for the affiliate team, for example. They have very different needs from the reporters team. And for them, it's things like background research on products or on shows or on events, because they're writing about, live concerts coming up and, essentially selling tickets for that. But they might not know every artist or every show that's about to watch. So we create dossiers for them on all of that, again, in a moment, which then they can use. So the transcription toolkit, sorry to, just the idea that we can have specific toolkits for specific teams, essentially. And the transcription toolkit is one that we're really excited about, because I think at the heart of what we do really is that intelligence gathering of I've had a conversation like this, right? And what am I going to do with all that information afterwards?
Mhm. How long does it typically take you to build one of these things?
Um, so I joke to my team that like I'm a rocket scientist, but then when I show them the back end, I always say, "Okay, here you're gonna find out. I actually am not super smart. It is super easy." I mean, that was the biggest appeal for MindStudio to me. I actually just showed it to another colleague at another organization, a sort of sister organization of ours. We're sort of owned by the same larger company, and I was like, "What's your use case?" And it was, "Oh, I need social media copy." And I sort of just built it in 10 minutes in front of her. I probably could have done it in 5 if I didn't explain everything. It is super easy. There are some that get more complicated. Sometimes the cron jobs, can be a little bit more complicated depending on how the website is kind of structured. But even then, it's very easy, and it's worth pointing out. I am not a developer. I code at like a second grade level, so I am good enough to like break anything you give me. And all of this is very, very doable just through language. Another great use case is I'll give you two that again, these are stories that we wouldn't be doing today. So it's so in terms of hours, this isn't even hours. These are like stories that are published that we would not be able to do today if it
Mhm.
weren't for this. One of them is restaurant violations in at least one of our markets. It's probably going to start to become 2 or 3 markets. These stories are when there's a restaurant that has a health code violation, there's a report that comes out regularly. And again, to take it and to put it into a format, it's not Pulitzer Prize winning, right? But it is information for the public, but it takes a lot of both time and mental tax. But now those stories are done with a click of a button, essentially, and we can do them on a regular basis. And those are stories that the newsroom stopped doing. Um, but now they're able to just do it because it's not hard. Another one would have been, well, one we have in Pennsylvania, again, they stopped publishing the lottery winning ticket numbers in the paper. I don't know what the reason was behind that. And we started getting a lot of complaints. And sort of like, oh, are we gonna have to put these in digital now? We're gonna have to do this every single day. And I sort of said, don't worry about it. Again, we have a cron job that takes the winning numbers every day, puts it into Slack, and then all they have to do is take it from Slack into the CMS, hit paste, no complaints. Again, it's not Pulitzer Prize winning stuff. It actually does do decent traffic. And again, those are stories we just would have stopped doing them altogether because it's not worth a human having to like, kind of do that individually. Um, and so there's just a lot of excitement and a lot to explore still. I'm again in terms of layers, the next thing that I'm trying to wrap my head around, and I haven't even started yet, but I'm going to is now there's the ability to connect workflows to each other, essentially, right? From bring in a workflow, send a variable to this workflow, bring back the output of that one, and kind of combine them because um, there's a lot, of those 80 workflows, there are times when I could see a reporter wanting to run 3 or 4 of them. And again, right now they sort of have to do it individually. And now I want to wrap my head around with one click, all this stuff sort of happening and coming back. Um, Again, I like, that's a relatively new feature. And so I haven't fully, sort of had a chance to tackle it, but that's one that I'm excited about. I have been really impressed with your deployment. The iterations that you guys have been going through. In fact, I think just to yesterday or today, the API update, right? Like, I would say they've all been on the mark in terms of kind of like things that I have wanted to see, and um, you know, both the practical in terms of like, oh, new LLMs and those making available, but also the sort of more abstract, more MindStudio kind of like updates, the ability to take notes on my canvas, so to speak, and stuff like that. Like all of them, I can see that you all are churning, and I appreciate that.